You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Radio Free Larry.
All right, here we go again. I was using that UR44 Steinberg device, but what was happening is that the audio from the system on the device was being processed through that and doubling the volume, it seemed like. So there was no way using the app I was using to adjust that. So anyway, I'm mobile right now, so I'm using my mobile rig. I'll figure out what to do when I get to it. However, I'm waiting for a Walmart order that got messed up, and I'm trying to fix that. And I'd like to move my storage unit. I'm just not sure. Oh, wait, I touched my face. Oh, no, decon time, decon. Whoop, whoop, whoop. A little bit of hand sanitizer to the noggin. Decon. You know, if you wipe it off, it's still going to work a little bit. And this guy to tell you, oh, you can't wipe it off or it doesn't work. Well, now I'll use straight up alcohol. That'll work even better. Got all my decon items here. Now, if you only put a little bit on and don't let it dry, then it won't work. But if you totally soak your hands and wipe some of it off, it'll work. But you got to leave some sort of residue. Can't completely dry it. So everything that I'm saying now is the same thing I've been saying for years. What the deep state will do, Satan will do, they're one and the same in your mind and in the conversation. Say, well, what is he doing now? What does this mean? They'll hide my posts. They'll hide my tweets. You won't be able to Google it or search it through their search engines and find it when they want to. Because, again, sometimes you can find it. But if you find it, it doesn't mean that somebody else is going to find it. Again, who they hide it from, it's an entire NSA and CIA operation using foreign nationals, using our own agencies, using foreign governments, using spycraft corporations. And they know they've taken over the world. They've said things over the years to say, yes, this is the way it is. Then when the judgments come in, oh, what's he talking about? We're not doing that. Well, that's pretty double-minded because you said you were doing it, and that's power and just the way it is in the game of life. And Christians have said that also. So again, there is a state-approved church list. Sometimes the CIA is working an official assignment in that church and then brings it in as one of its own, as being part of the beast and the deep state. The CIA is part of the beast. Yes, you can look at a physical operation and say, look what they're doing. Well, it means nothing. The physical means nothing. The Bible tells you that. Now, you're to do physical good works, but if behind it is ulterior motive, the idea of having the stature of that so that you can engage in the beast's activity, which is what the beast is doing. If you read the Bible, the beast will engage in physical activity that appears to be downright holy. but yet be a crook. And I said about President Trump. Now, it doesn't. I said President Trump can't be the Antichrist or the son of perdition. There are many Antichrists. As there one, there was many. I was finishing the decon there. That's what you're hearing. So he can't be because he doesn't look pure. He has a history. So God, in God's wisdom, shows the truth. Now, we're how many centuries past the arrival of Rabbi Jesus? Rabbi Jesus is Jesus. I use the name Rabbi Jesus Emmanuel Christ, Ben David, son of David, Ben Elohim, son of God. That's a Jewish Kabbalistic structuring of his name, and it's very powerful. But I'm not a Messianic Jew. I'm with God. That's my designation. I'm with God. That's real God, not Satan that you call God, all of you. But we're all this time passes, and Jesus said, well, I am going to go. It's your turn. You're on. But what the churches do, and there's nothing wrong with your worship per se, but what you're doing is you're precluding everything else. It's the same thing that happened when Rabbi Jesus came. They said, no, he can't be true because of this. But yet even the Torah and the Talmud speaks of a continual lineage of information. And it doesn't mean that it's a particular person or another. Although they did have a structure, they used that structure for evil, so God overthrew their structure by bringing Rabbi Jesus into the world. And that's been done in like fashion as other people have been on for that same activity on earth. Now, Jesus tells you, there are others that hear my voice that aren't part of us, not part of this fold, and they are with us also. So the key to that is hearing Rabbi Jesus' voice, which is nothing that necessarily denotes it being Rabbi Jesus. They know his voice and they know him in his spiritual person. It doesn't necessarily mean that they see him other than another rabbi or as a spiritual being, such as an angel or whatever it may be. Now, I believe in what Jesus said, and Jesus said that he was not God and that he was not good, and that God alone was good, and then we know that God is God in heaven, and he calls that his Father. So Jesus tells us his Father is good, but he is not good. And that's a lost idea within the church also. But what's happened with these state-approved churches is you'll have people that are real pedophiles, and they're in the church. And they won't get taken out because they work for the deep state. However, if somebody else comes along that the deep state wants to cause to be a victim, they will insinuate things such as that's a rapist, that's a murderer, that's a pedophile, that's a narcotics user, that's a womanizer, that's a lush, a lech, whatever it is they can heap as an insult upon their heads. Now, you realize they use that against Rabbi Jesus. And don't let your church tell you that they're not doing that and they're only gossiping. They're not only gossiping, it's a scientific effort. That scientific effort is a technology, and that technology is spycraft. Spycraft is a psychological science that also uses medical science. Your CIA, your FBI, your Marshal Service, your Customs, your local police, your state police have individuals within those organizations that are engaged in that specific Nazi Mengel activity against people that they want to murder or to murder others. And it will last a lifetime. They'll tell you they're watching, but they're not watching. They're operating. And they're operating spycraft. And they're causing changes in people, societies, nations, and the world. You have coronavirus because God wants to destroy this place and take out mankind. No other reason. Now, if it doesn't do that, what are you going to say? God's a weakling? Is that what you're going to say? or it can't be God because it didn't destroy us, or God doesn't want to do that because it doesn't destroy us. The Bible is full of moments when God did not stop something, such as what? The crucifixion of Christ. Evil won in that particular instance physically, but spiritually, for all time, God won. So again, the sin is erased. There is no requirement to go to church. There is no real requirement to tithe. There are recommendations. You see, in a way, Jesus, in the Bible, if you read the words I posted today, condemns any follow-on activity creating ordinances such as going to church, such as tithing. You're supposed to live a lifestyle of charity, because what that promotes is a system of a centralized power of religion that then says, you are good, you are bad, you get to stay, you must go. This is what's going on. But who took that over? The CIA. Now, I say the CIA, but of course it's everything but the United States. But they hold those positions. Therefore, that's what it is. I'm going to put down the windows here shortly. It's getting a little warm in this vehicle. But this is where the world is today. And I can help you understand these things, but I can't force you in any direction or force you to believe it. But God can try to force you, but it generally doesn't work. The deep state, Satan, has controlled so much of this that, let me see if I can get these windows down here. Where is the key? Oh, here it is. I guess I have to start the vehicle. I have no idea how long I'm going to broadcast. I'm going to broadcast until my stuff gets here. Hopefully it doesn't get too loud with background noise. So again, there is the question as to whether the church is authorized by Rabbi Jesus at all. Yet Jesus did say, "Hey, you're on. It's your turn." So again, I try not to be double-minded in that argument that you decided that a church was a good idea. To centralize everything all over again so that the CIA can crucify people using the church. That's what's going on. I don't care what they told you, what you believed. Many of you knew it was part of a secret society movement to enrich and empower certain people and to take away from others. Now, the justification is political party sometimes, and that's something you have to be very careful of. I'm not sure where the president and his family are on that, and they may have stepped over the line with the reports recently. I'm rinsing there. Good to rinse your mouth also. Use some mouthwash and things like that. That's an antiseptic for the mouth. It's much more pleasant where I live here now than it was the other place. And it's very nice. It's run by some Indian people, and it's marked by Jesus. Jesus actually just showed me in that second his mark on a certain window. It's not on every window. It's on that one over there. So Jesus showed me they marked this place. I don't know if they're Hindu or Christian or what. They're most likely Hindu. But again, God accepts people's worship. And it's a personal relationship. Do I recommend that they accept Jesus? 100%. I recommend that they believe in the work of Rabbi Jesus and believe that he came to earth to seek and save them by simply dying on the cross. It was a simple physical action, but it was a huge spiritual activity. And it's called the simple plan of salvation. It does not include church membership. It does not include tithing. It does not include anything other than believing. Otherwise, it would be useless because this planet would manipulate it and require you to worship a human being or Satan in the form of a human being And in that way, you would be able to ascend to heaven. Otherwise, you can't. Before the church believes, like, hey, yeah, right, that's what Hinduism and everything. Well, not necessarily. Listen to what I said. Some Hindus are monotheistic, believe it or not. They believe in God and God alone. But think about this. You're worshiping preachers and you're worshiping churches. That's what's really going on. You will give up all of what Jesus commands to follow a person and a church. And you've done it. You've become the deep state, many of you churches, believing that you're part of the partner system at times. Again, in Soviet Union, they would use the comrade system. You would be a comrade. You're a partner, aren't you? Well, our partners do this for us, and we do that for our partners. So again, law enforcement is law enforcement, but it's not God. And if you study the term law enforcement, again, I brought this all up all along, and I'm bringing it up in the context of God's judgments here. If you study the term law enforcement, that's what religion was in ancient times. Law enforcement was religion in ancient times. I'll tell you for a second here why I want to use that Steinberg UR44. It uses what's called the camera kit on the iPad, and in that kit, you can plug in a power supply to power the iPad, whether it's a battery or plug it into an outlet or an inverter in a vehicle. Speaking of which, I need to start my vehicle here. I got my phone plugged in. Actually, I could turn that off, tell you the truth, because I'm not powering this now, and I was. So again, the idea is that I would be able to power my iPad while using that device. But again, that device needs to be plugged in. It's not fully mobile. I could use an inverter or another power supply probably to a certain degree. So law enforcement was religion in ancient times. So Satan created this need for a separate law enforcement entity and then uses it to launch the old attack similar to Jesus. Now, similar to what they did to Jesus. Now, let me go back to an argument about Ilhan Omar. Yes, she's wrong. But you have to be careful of your arguments, because what it came up as is that you can't criticize the Sanhedrin. Well, the Sanhedrin fell. It crucified Jesus. That's Jesus' whole argument. Jesus' whole reason for coming was that the religious power had failed once again. Now, of course, she supports things that she shouldn't support, but the Sanhedrin, the Sadducees, and Pharisees, scribes, and all those had fallen into extreme self-righteousness. And in doing so, were using psychological warfare and spycraft to take out Jesus. It's nothing new. It just moves around to where it is. And again, I told you about Afghanistan. If you fix Afghanistan, it'll come up somewhere else. I've been telling you this for years. I tell you, if you fix Iraq, if you fix this, if you fix the economy, it's going to come up somewhere else. You have to stop what's happening. It's a mixture of several things. It's not purely physical, but it's the same entity because it's replicating itself metaphysically. So once the CIA comes along, once the FBI comes along, once the local PD corrupt guy or the local state police corrupt guy comes along and does their thing, Satan has more way in that person's life. Again, what they're doing is causing somebody to fall. That's an abomination. Using government to do that curses the government and causes that government to be an abomination. So again, the greatest nation on earth, I can agree with that. But that's actually saying the greatest demon in hell. You have caused hell to exist on earth. God could not get through to the people to regulate the people. That's why Jesus came in the first place. If the system of the law could save, then everybody would be saved. But when the system of the law comes, others, evil eye, others not to adhere to that law. And before you say anything, there's nothing physical happening. It's all metaphysical, also known as spiritual. The physical things are happening based upon metaphysical activity, spiritual activity, cursing, evil eye, healing, praying for somebody to a certain degree. Because most people that are limited to praying aren't of the heart of wanting it healed because, again, double-mindedness. They put the curse out there and then they see somebody harmed. Go, oh, you should be well, dear Lord. But the reality is they caused it with their hate and their gossip. And again, it could be a sweet old lady that's been in your church for 60 years. But she's been a devil the whole time, cursing the congregation down so she could be the special person. And Mississippi Mass Choir, I think, just came up with my head. I think that's what they're called. Not to say she is, or they are. But they must be hearing something. Praise God that they can. Because most people can't hear. I didn't get my cues for the last 7 days. And those cues coming from God. Because the deep state is watching and cursing. And I'll tell you what, I haven't been sloughing off. Now, I haven't been speaking, I've been moving, but I'm also, with God, evaluating what's going on metaphysically around the COVID-19. If you touch your face today and you don't want to, God wants to let you know. If you don't want to touch your face today, God doesn't want you to touch your face. And if God were empowered on earth, you wouldn't touch your face, and there wouldn't be any COVID-19, and the deep state would all be moved away, and the earth would be very different. But the governments don't believe in God. They believe in Satan that they call God. So if I touch my face, God and I go through this thing. And believe me, I've been in social distancing and decontaminating, and so me touching my face is probably not the same as everyone else. And again, the president touched his face. Why? Because the Democrats wanted him to. Remember, it works backwards and forwards. When it comes to metaphysics, there's no time and space. What they're going to curse you to tomorrow is being set up today and was set up yesterday. What they're going to curse you to tomorrow, and I've said this for 15 years, what they're going to curse you to tomorrow is being set up today and was actually being set up before. So if you have questions of how the earth is actually designed or redesigned away from God's original designation of the garden, it's them. So they reached into the garden from the future. It's called a paradox. But again, God knew in the creation of earth that there would be growing pains and things that God would have to do here. But God had to... I just rubbed my lower lip on my shoulder. But the thing is, you have to understand, if you're in a store and you go around a store hanging out or you're hanging around a lot of people, and most stores, okay, Walmart's pretty airy. I went into Ross the other day. It was thick. I said, if COVID-19 existed in here, everybody's got it. They need to turn the AC on. And I wanted to say that. Recommend that retail outlets keep their fans going. Ross it seemed like it had all of its utilities shut off. I guess to bring that great price, but boy, it was thick. I stayed a couple minutes and skedaddled, and then soaked myself in hand sanitizer. So again, that's another thing. If they move their fan and their air purification systems in the stores a little bit, it'll help also keep that stuff most likely to a minimum. So they're blinding the minds to all sorts of things. So again, the president touched his face because the Democrats and the deep state cursed him to it. That's why they were able to pull it up. Oh, the president lied. He touched his face. Now, What did the president actually say? He misses touching his face. He didn't say, I don't mess up touching I don't mess up and don't touch my face. I mess up and I touch my face. He didn't have to say that. But he misses touching his face. He knows it. He knows he touches his face, and it's driving him nuts, like everyone else. So again, them highlighting it like that actually put them in to an average seer. Or not an average seer, a great seer that's without God's specific connection explaining it. If God had instructed them, they could say, well, wait a minute, that's kind of weird. And then God came through and said, well, they're the ones that caused it. And matter of fact, I had already gone through it with God as to what was happening, as to how I was touching things. And it was like a series. I would touch something, decontaminate, and then really I could say accidentally touch something, but I was being willed to touch something. So again, the government people are willing the people to touch things and touch their face. So they're actually, in the middle of COVID-19, willing people, cursing people, even eyeing people to contract COVID-19. Now say, well, only more, and people that are the wrong political this or saying that about us, but that's a lie. They did this to me before I ever knew anything or said anything. So that was kind of the magic of God. Having me asleep really hurt my life, but God needed that to happen so I could wake up and they couldn't say what they were going to say. Now, if God could have woken me up sooner, he would have, but he couldn't. So again, what does that mean? God works in depth. The first thing is God wants you to have a perfect life. And that includes being awake. And don't think about the awoke. The awoke is something the CIA put out there so that Republicans would discredit or think discrediting things about the term awakening. So you see, the CIA and the Kroll and the Fusion GPS and the Booz Allen Hamilton and the Stanley Arkin Group and all those CIA groups out there are actually what I'm speaking about, to include private sector people that are installed, and I can't think of the word because they're blocking it, but they're put in these corporations, sometimes as official CIA operation. They have to go into Walmart so they can launch their operation at a future time. But while they're there, they work deep state business instead of minding their own business. So again, they might even start as a clerk, or that would be kind of low, but most likely a manager, and then move up through it, and then go to global governance or something like that, and move across the earth, and work supposedly official operations. But there's no official operation left. The official operation is the covering of the deep state operation. The only reason the deep state does any of the official government business is to cover I thought my stuff was here, I guess not, is to cover its criminal operations. So again, that's true about the majority of government. Are there people in the government that don't know about that? Yes. Are those people okay? No. They're either going to be corrupt one day or they're going to be killed. And corruption includes allowing it to exist. Corruption includes allowing it to exist. So again, if you're in the government today and you don't know about that, and you get around those people, and they don't trust you, and they think you know, they'll murder you. They'll murder you any way they can. They're that sick. They're narcissistic. And that's why you see the narcissistic term coming out so much. Because they're narcissistic. Anything the deep state wants to discredit being used against them, they'll put it out there in a big paintbrush so it loses its... This is all spycraft that I'm speaking about. This is how they do it. They put it out there so it loses its definition to begin with, and then say, well, you're saying it because we're saying it. Or they can steer the narrative on what it actually means, like awoke. Awoke is so stupid. But what's the reality? It's disrespecting God and the awakening that God provides. And that's the term being used by those that want to discredit the real awakening that I've been speaking about since approximately 2005, 2004, I guess I imagine. So I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but Satan set up a trap, and I'm unraveling it the best that I can. But the metaphysical power of Satan has increased. That's why you're seeing people transferring COVID-19 community-wise. Otherwise, it would work where it wouldn't happen. Okay. Well, I was reading this. Okay. Okay. Well, one of my orders is late, and I can understand it being late. It's just, I don't want to be like dissed and not receive it. So again, it can be contained. I don't believe that it has to be as widespread as other things. First off, they're paying attention, which is really an instruction for CDC. It costs a lot of money, but maybe we need to start quarantining people with the flu. It would be the responsible thing to do. You know, when we speak of medicine and how it can advance, that would be an advance, quite frankly. Now, there's a lot to do with that to make sure things don't fall apart in a person's life while they're quarantined. But I think as far as the socialism aspect of it, we could afford to keep our people healthier by doing that. But this will tell us how well it works. As I pointed out, people in China and Italy are notorious for not taking showers. Not everybody, I understand that, but not taking showers would probably allow it to replicate. I'm not saying that somebody's dirty because they get COVID-19, because you can get it from just breathing it. But the fact is that the two countries that experienced the most exigent situation of rapid expansion are two nations that are known to have people that don't regularly shower. So that's kind of where we are. It does make sense that if you take 3 showers a day, that you would be safer than everybody else, but it doesn't guarantee that you wouldn't have that happen. The other thing is the question that needs to be asked now. Italy kind of throws a monkey wrench in the idea that COVID-19 is weakening. But then again, is that a different strain that entered into Italy than what we're seeing here? And there's another point. Usually and it'll get to that point at a certain point, usually our flus and things are bottom-up illnesses, which means lower income people generally contract it first and spread it. Or if they don't contract it first, they're usually the spreaders. Just because their lifestyle doesn't allow them to stop for a moment, take 2 weeks off, wash their hands every day, and you know, live a life in bed with NyQuil all day. As it does wealthy people. And some wealthy people are driven to work, so that could happen too. But most of the time, we're seeing it moving that way. Homeless people, people that have to work and can't take days off, people that don't have time to be as clean as someone else, or money to purchase things like hand sanitizer and soap and other things. But in this particular case, it's our upper middle class, most likely, possibly middle class, but our most likely our upper middle class to the upper class that are spreading it. Going on these cruises, traveling all over the world for these seminars and other things. And they are not in contact as much with the local Joe. That's I think what's going to happen. I think that's one of the reasons that we're not seeing the spread so quick. Is that these are people that generally will not interact as rapidly at the level that we usually see communicable things moving through the community. Because when they speak about these people, they've always been somebody that traveled, somebody that's cruising, somebody that's sea packing. So again, not sure what the future of it is. And the question is, if it does happen here, how many people actually pass on, and is it out of the ordinary? The president's right, but the argument gets a little lost. The president was saying, well, there's only this many people infected and this many people that pass. Our flus are this big. Well, COVID-19 could be that big, and it could be worse, but it's not, and that's the point. The safety net that was put in place is doing a well job, but the question is, will it always do that well job? And you know what? As a side note, I had allergies for years with this stomach infection that I had for years. And I still have allergies, but it's like, okay, this is like allergies I remember from like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, like mild. I mean, the allergens here, I'm looking at these blooming flowers on the trees, and the allergies here are like, pegging the pollen meter. But I have this a little bit of a dry throat. I have almost zero congestion. I'm not taking Flonase at all. I've jacked my immunity, which could cause allergies to get worse, actually. So that's looking up. And I'm trying to heal this ulcer in the middle of the deep state trying to cause it to exist forever. But it was real nice. I was able to give that bicycle away to that gentleman who rides to work every day. It only took me once seeing him like about 1.5 miles from where we lived while I was on my e-bike passing him on that bike. And I'm like, how was he riding that thing? And I walked over to it and was locked on the fence. And I touched the seat, and there's no padding left. And I said, this man is riding this bike to work every day. Somebody's got to let him up by getting him up, because just letting him up is not going to work. So once I decided to buy him the bicycle, people came out of the woodwork saying, yeah, I was over at the Salvation Army with him. He is the nicest guy. And then the next person would come along, and of course God's doing this, come along, oh, that guy, I was in the Salvation Army with him. He's the nicest guy. So I got him the bicycle, and I couldn't get it to him. I'm like, maybe he doesn't want the bicycle. I gave the phone. I moved. I was in the middle of my move, and I'm like, I can't find this guy. Walmart's late with the delivery, like is happening every time now. And I said, what am I going to do? So I said, well, I'm going to have a truck. I'll be able to bring the bike to him. And then the phone number got to him. He called me, and it was good. But he was moved to tears. I'm just like, well, it's God. It's not me. I wouldn't think of this. I couldn't do this without God. It's God's money. It's God. Just remember that. And I kept telling him that. And, if you ever need anything, I'm like, well, if I ever need anything. I hate to use a person that I gave something to like that. because I understand he wants to feel like he's reciprocating, and maybe there's a day that I could use him, but I don't. I just don't feel like. I mean, he's put into that predicament. I know that in life. I've told him. I said, "This is not your life, man." I gave him a quick rundown on the evil eye and how it works. That's not the life God had for you. That's not the life you earned. That's why, I didn't get to the point where I said that's why your crowns are in heaven, but that's why the crowns are in heaven, because Earth's a cheapskate and getting cheaper every day. Doesn't pay you your just due. I know you'll hear Christians to talk about how their life is so big, and they've got big preachers, and who is more and who is that person to speak. They don't have a big church. They're not highly holy like everybody that we're around. And of course, there's none good, no, not one. So again, what the church is saying like that is Antichrist. It's Antichristus. You're speaking as Antichrist. You're overturning the order of Christ with your judgments of others, with your political statements, with your, quite frankly, abominations of the mind and action. And that action is physical, metaphysical, and spiritual, and psychological, should I say. Because metaphysical is the same as spiritual. But it's easier to say metaphysical because spiritual speaks of the spirit. And, yes, there is evil spirit, but I prefer to say metaphysical. And the term's been used by many people throughout history, but the church has been caused to move away from terms that even Kabbalists used, which are rabbis, that rabbis used to help explain Judaism more expansively than the traditional, or I wouldn't say traditional, the neo-traditional dogma, the modern-day tradition. So again, Satan made it very difficult to give that guy that bicycle, but I was able to get to it. I was able to give him the bicycle. I was almost able to work this order out from Walmart, but it came a day early, which is, again, very questionable. I told them I thought it was going to. I said, it's going to be here. Don't worry about it, sir. And they told me it was held a couple times, and I said, look, it's not holding. And then finally I got the name of the people that's supposed to hold it for me, and it would have taken another day at least for that to have worked. And it came early. I'm going to have to sit here for as long as I need to receive it. Because they're not prepared to receive it here. It's too big for where I live. And then on Sunday, some idiot from the post office tried to deliver my mail to where I live when this is and couldn't find it because this is a community receiving area, and that's what they're supposed to do. The regular post office guy, of course, knew that. So I'll let you go for a bit here. And remember to praise God in all that you do. Praise God.
You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry, presiding.
You can run, but you can hide.